So Hollywood needs their own version of peer mediators to make sure people don't grope each other.
I mean, it's like the HR of sex scenes or whatever.
So it says Amanda Seyfried wishes she had intimacy coordinators as a teen, let herself become uncomfortable on set. She said, I wanted to keep my job. Basically, she says, I did nude scenes because I wanted to. It's what was expected of me, and that's the way it went. So she says, Amanda Seyfried told Porter Magazine that she purposely let herself be uncomfortable on film sets earlier in her career because she felt it was the only way to keep her job. Is that Hollywood's fault?
I don't know.
Or
yeah,
is this
it is. Because
I think it is, yeah.
Because they want to push you to do further and further. They'll frame it as like, well, you just need to do this in order to get this role. Mm-hmm. And it goes further from there. Is it also an issue of that the men would just not be uncomfortable in these situations, perhaps, but the women will have a harder time advocating for their discomfort?
No, it's because it's different for men than it is for women.
Well, it's both. That's what I'm saying. If a man is uncomfortable with it, then he's more likely to stand up for himself, probably.
First of all, yeah.
And also, female nudity is more important to society than male nudity. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The female body is just fundamentally perceived differently as more sacred, more important, more sexual, everything like that.
Yeah.
And oddly, they will show full frontal female nudity, but they don't
ever show
They
male,
don't show the front of men.
Interesting.
And it's because one is far more sought after.
Yes.
It's just true. I mean,
it's a market value thing.
Yeah.
For sure.
So it says the publication noted that the Emmy and Oscar nominee wishes she could be coming up now in an era where intimacy coordinators are an on-set requirement and actors are in a better position to speak up. Seyfried said that she emerged pretty unscathed, but her early days as an actor in Hollywood, she does look back on in shock. I imagine it would have been like the Wild Wild West in the early 2000s in this industry. And is this a side effect of just Hollywood becoming increasingly more obsessed with sexual proclivities within the industry? I mean, that's obviously true.
I think it's always been a depraved industry behind closed doors. It's just now they're letting it show through in what they're producing. It's been an incremental process of desensitizing the audiences to this.
A little bit here, a little bit there, and eventually you're
like,
so far
I remember
away from where
there
you started.
was nudity in The Shining. I think Hollywood was a very different place when The Shining was being made, but and that would be considered very subversive. Then I don't know what it was supposed to accomplish for the story of that movie. But
now they subvert by saying, let's get married. Let's wait till we get married and then have kids.
Now they use nudity in TV shows and movies not to push a boundary, but to just assure that there are no boundaries.
That's interesting. That's a good point.
So it says, being 19, walking around without my underwear on. Like, are you kidding me? How did I let that happen? Seyfried said. Oh, I know. I was 19 and I don't want to upset anybody and wanted to keep my job. That's why. So do we raise... I'm going to try to be as sensitive as possible. Like, she's an adult.
Yes.
She can make her own decisions.
Yep.
She's not blaming anyone in particular. She's just saying this was the state of the industry.
She wished things had been different.
She's
she's allowed to wish that, right?
So, is this the type of thing where we have to like? I had the crisis meter logo turned off. Whoops.
Oh, okay.
It was off for when we did the tape show. Is this type of thing where like? Because you're just allowed to do this stuff once you turn 18, and this is an industry where you're immediately thrust into the spotlight with far more powerful people. Whereas if you're 18 or 19, you get a job at a Walmart, you're not hanging out with the CEO of the company or some guy with great influence. You're hanging out with other people that are 18 or 19 or at most a manager who's may have a little bit of power over your schedule, but he doesn't run a casting couch in the back room.
And we were mentioning this in the context of Demi Lovato for the episode that we're posting tomorrow, where she met her boyfriend that she's now throwing under the bus for their age gap on a set when she was 17. Normally 17-year-olds don't commingle with people in that age range.
That'd be considered weird, yeah.
With a 29-year-old. That's not normal. So I think the industry, both intentionally and just coincidentally, is rife with all of these problems. interpersonally, and also because there are like power hungry executives who get like bored.
Yeah.
So is the best? I'm guessing I can guess your position on this. Hollywood chooses to hire intimacy coordinators. I'm guessing your belief would be that we just don't need the intimacy coordinators because we shouldn't be shooting these scenes anyways.
I'm inclined to agree. My theory on
No, I'm asking if is that your. I'm kind of putting words in your mouth here, but I'm assuming that that's
go for it.
What your position would be, that maybe we don't need these scenes at all.
What we need is decency laws.
Decency laws.
To apply not only to cable television, but also streaming platforms.
That's very interesting. I was just going to say, my theory about sex scenes is that the way our culture views sex, no sex scene is not something you can get rid is indisposable. You could literally get rid of every single sex scene and be fine. It doesn't advance the plot. We don't view it as being anything valuable, so why is it there?
Very rarely is it ever shown. I can't remember the last time I watched one where it was actually supposed to be. Sometimes, oddly enough, the place where it probably would be considered the most meaningful would be on a network TV show where they keep two characters away from each other for a very long time, and it's the will they, won't they, and then they finally get together, and
but
then
even
that's supposed
then,
to be... when they
that
did,
plot point doesn't need to be illustrated by showing,
and it never lives up
everything.
to it
Explicit.
anyways. When they did in the show Bones with David Boreanaz and Emily Deschanel, they didn't get together until season 6, and they never show when they finally got together. They didn't show it.
There you go.
At all.
It's not that complicated.
They literally basically the idea was in the show was that she was emotionally vulnerable. He was emotionally vulnerable. They just lost a colleague, and it basically shows her like choosing to, because she was like staying at his house at where he lived for safety reasons at the time. Basically, the idea is like that she like came into his room and they basically were consoling each other over this colleague that died, and then the next day she's talking to a colleague and mentions that it happened. The night before. They never show it on screen.
It's so easy to do it without any kind of gross nudity or anything.
And I feel like it makes more people uncomfortable than it intrigues anybody.
Yeah.
So why is it being basically... you said you found it was mandated by studios.
Oh, yeah. There's studios that have mandated amounts of sex scenes and nudity in their shows.
Absolutely
Game of Thrones.
insane.
Game of Thrones... they're doing the same thing. Matt Smith, I talked about it earlier. I said Matt Smith talks about how he's like he went to like one of the producers for House of the Dragon, and he's like, "Does it really need this much sex?"
And they're like, "Yeah, actually, it does." To me, this just proves that they're all fresh out of ideas. Yep. They have no more material.
Well, also they know that it sells. They know. The other one was okay. I remember. I was trying to remember the show. I remember earlier where like the director or the creator said he would have been just as happy to not have it. It was the first season of the show True Detective with Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. There's a fairly famous nude scene with Alexandra Daddario.
Yeah.
In that went fairly viral. And he said that he would have been just as happy to not have it in there, but he wrote and directed every episode, which is extremely rare in that industry. And if he was going to get his way on that, he said that the network mandated that they have nude scenes.
One of these scenes, right? Yep. At least one. Yeah.
There should be no person in this industry, no matter what the age or if they're a man or a woman, who feels like they will get fired if they don't comply with this. Yeah. It's predatory to even mandate it.
Well, I mean, to me, I say
that's
like,
presuming that you get the consent of the actors before it's been given to you.
The idea here is like, I have no problem with them mandating it as long as you tell the actors beforehand and say, like, if you want this, like, you have to do this, and then the actor can decide for themselves whether they want to do that or not. On the show Power, the Omari Hardwick show, there was written into all the clauses of their contracts that said you will have to be nude on screen, and they had to decide before they got on that show whether that was something they were willing to do.
Yeah. So. And I'm just really tired of the disingenuous arguments that these extremely graphic scenes add to plot or somehow, I don't know, make it subversive or deep or artistic. And it accomplishes none of that. Like, I guarantee you could just as easily convey depravity or evil in a masked way. Yep. Like, I tried to watch Wolf of Wall Street, and it was just disgusting. Like, I turned it off because there's no effort being put into like actually communicating like the depravity of their lifestyles without showing it, and then also by showing it, inviting you into it.
Yeah.
Did you know that Jonah Hill went to the hospital because of all the fake coke he had?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. That's crazy.
The other interesting part about that is, and we're getting a little bit esoteric here, is like, oddly enough, usually when these scenes are done, they're shot beautifully, and the actual professionalism of the set design and the cinematography is beautiful, but then it seems to run in contrast with, I mean, depending on what your level of comfort with watching stuff like this is. I don't mind. It does, like I said, it doesn't bother me. I know it bothers other people. It doesn't bother me, but I don't seek it out, and
but
I don't
think
find
about that.
And I don't agree.
That's
and I do
manufactured
agree.
consent.
Exactly.
If anything is, that's, you feel okay with it because it's been shoved in your face for so long. Think about if you had confronted that at a different time. If you had been from a different time. This has been a long time coming. That they've sprinkled it in and then just fully like opened the floodgates that anything goes.
And even if it doesn't bother me, I do agree that it very rarely, if ever, actually is actually necessary. Like, you don't need it for the storytelling. So on that, I do agree. I do like this paragraph at the end. It's from an actor named Raul Coley. They list him as from Bly Manor and Midnight Mass, but I love him from the far underrated masterpiece iZombie, which is a Vertigo comic and show from a couple years ago. It says, I've worked with a few intimacy coordinators now, and while ever so slightly embarrassing at first, are essential for protecting our safety, making us comfortable, and opening up constructive dialogue between the actors and director when scenes call for intimacy. Is this something like maybe the directors are just not good at their job, and like the directors should be able to do both, but they just now, for legal reasons and because we have ballooning HR departments all over the country, that they needed to add another position?
I'm sure that intimacy coordinators do more than just intimacy coordination. They're people who have been in the industry for a long time.
Hope so, yeah.
I mean, that didn't become an accredited thing for SAG-AFTRA till this year. Like, it didn't even become like a union job until like a couple months ago.
And also, the fact that you need to coordinate intimacy means that it is not intimacy. That's the point.
Yeah,
that
it is
absolutely
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A technical exercise, which is why I disagree with what Sean Bean said about it.
Yep. Yeah, that was weird. Like, my instinct is to agree with him because he's from the old school.
Well,
but then
also,
I'm like,
he works with a ton of hot women and he wants to touch them.
Oh, well,
So-
there you go.
he's been married 5 times. So
He's been married 5 times, which makes him a romantic, right?
I'm thinking of like Joss Whedon when he's like, all these hot women were trying to sleep with me. What would you have had me do? I think he's like, they would have never talked to me in high school. Was I supposed to just not sleep with them?
I mean, yes. Keep it together, man.
I suppose so. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.